Welcome again to another chapter of podcast. Today we have a guest who needs no introduction, Dr. Avi Singh, who has graduated from Government Medical College, Amritsar, and has secured a splendid USMLE score and is currently doing his second year of residency in neurology from Emory University, Atlanta. Welcome, Dr. Avi Singh.
Thank you, Abhishek. It's always a pleasure to be invited and seeing familiar faces along the way.
Absolutely. So I'm pretty sure our audience right now are most of them must have seen you somewhere, you being a famous personality on the internet. So definitely we're trying to cover all segment of students who are looking forward for getting into uh, a residency in the US. Now, more or less, if you see, whenever you must have come across students, or even when I ask students what specialty you want to get into, most of the times people aim either for general surgery or they were like, okay, fine, it's internal medicine.
Mhm. Yeah.
Very few predetermined students like you would say, hey, I would want to get into neurology, and you ensure that you get into it. So
Mhm.
definitely, we would want to explore more on the neurology side of it in today's session.
Mhm.
So I would want you to tell as many details as possible to the students as to if they were getting into neurology, what does it take for a student to get in there?
Mhm.
So having said that, let's begin exploring more of your side of the story. So when did you start, with the first approach of the USMLE, that being the first baby step towards the world of
Mhm.
US residency?
It's a great question, Abhishek. I agree. US coming to the US as a student, it's a whole journey. Like it's a whole investment, not just financial, not just time wise, temporally, but a lot of mental investment. And there are a lot of unanswered questions. And the problem is that we have a lot of information out there, but it's so overwhelming. And I believe like it's not catering to the very substantial questions of why US? Why do I want to do what I want to do? And what are the options I really have? For example, someone who knows that he always wanted to do surgery, or someone who always wanted to know he wants to do neurology, and then there is another dilemma: do you want to go to the US or do you want to stay in India? And that kind of changes what you really want to do, thinking like, oh, if I'm going to the US, the only thing that will happen is medicine, because oh, the number of seats is like that. So we start forgetting what our calling is just because we want to make it to a place, versus sometimes you are someone who can potentially be a neurologist just because that option was never offered to you. You always had this neurophobia that you're not good enough at neurology, or the person that you're looking up to is someone who matched into medicine. You don't even explore that option well enough. I have always been that person who's been very supportive of knowing what you want in life and giving yourself a chance to follow that passion as your profession. Because I think everything else is secondary. Being wherever you are is secondary to what you're doing. The great thing, for example, with neurology was I could choose to be a neurologist in India. The pathway is a little longer, but that wasn't the reason I did not do it in India. How neurology works in the rest of the world or most developing countries is very different. There's mass medicine because you're serving a lot of people. The goal is to get as many people in the OPT and get them out as soon as possible, which is great if you want to be a great clinical doctor and also serve people. But I think you also have to identify what are your USPs or what are your specific passions within being a doctor. I love all of that, but I also love like leading the field from the front. And like neurology is so research heavy, like in not in the sense that I want to write papers, but in the sense like I want to use the interventions, the medicines that are coming out right away. And US in that sense leads the world, if especially in fields which are very new or very quickly evolving. For example, neurology 10-20 years from now used to be one of those fields where so cool, but what do you really change for the patient? Not a lot. You didn't have a lot of therapies. If someone came with a stroke, they were going to be with you with that stroke for a long time, and all you had was rehabilitation. Now we make sure like the stroke alerts are so real, 3 hours. I'm checking in. Oh, what's the time? Is he on any blood thinners? Let's get them TNK. Get them mechanical thrombectomy. All of this is happening within like 4 hours. And this is changing the life of not just one person. It's changing the life of two people, including the other person who would have taken care of that person with a stroke, right? So the field of neurology has changed so crazily in the last 10, 15 years, and it still is evolving to the point where interventional neurology is like going berserk. Like you do everything within neurology is changing. And someone gave me a really good advice a few years ago, like don't base on your decisions of what you want to be based on how things are looking right now. By the time you are something or like sailing at the peak of it, it's going to be 10, 15 years from now. So think about how life is going to look as your profession evolves in 10 to 15 years. So I think neurology is at the top, somewhere at the top there. Regardless, I think don't run behind success, run behind what you love. Because if you are really doing something you love, you're going to be so good at it that you're going to be the only name in that field. That is how neurology happened to me. It was the perfect balance of education, research, and also being a clinical doctor for me. And honestly, like we'll talk about how life is in the US, it is not a bed of roses. It has its own challenges and own luxuries. The only thing that's keeping me here, satisfied, making me wake up every day for work, is my love for the profession. Is that, oh, it was a heavy day, but I learned so much. Like I give myself a pat on the back, like, oh, I managed like 7 strokes today. Like, and no one will know that beyond a point. But the only thing that keeps me there is this is what I chose. This is what I wanted to do, and I'm getting better at this. Um, Compared to I was always that person, whatever made sense to me, I would follow it. And if it didn't make sense to me, I don't care if it makes sense to the world or not. I was All India rank 1 AFMC Pune at that time. I was in AIMS, All India rank 68. I got All India rank 4 CMC, and my family was like literally targeted with all the questions. Why did your like son not choose to go to all of these places? And sure, Government Medical College Amritsar is great, but he had more options. And I don't take the credit one bit for it. I don't know why did I not care, but I have no regrets because I realized it's all about you knowing yourself, how you function best, and not showing it to the world. See, I did this, or like I'm doing this to prove it to you. Even at that time, I used to read like tinier books, but I used to read it page to page. So I think that philosophy of me not caring how the world thinks stayed with me, and I try to endorse that when I'm in the US as well. This is what I felt would work for me, and that's why I'm going ahead with it. Does not mean it has to work for everyone. Does not mean you go to the US only because all your seniors are going to the US. Again, does not mean you stay in India only because your seniors are staying in India. It's a mixed bag, which includes your decision based on your profession. Also, it includes where you live. And I think it's a very fair thought to include if you are a family person who cannot stay away from your family for too long, or you have some family in the US, trying to be at a place where your family is. uh, you have to realize you're not just a doctor, you're also a human being who has its own needs, concerns. You're literally going to the other side of the world. But having said that, what you get here, if that is what you want, you get it only here. So you have to be very sure what you're giving up on, what you're taking, and what your personality is. Um, if you are someone who will be content, satisfied without having food from home, or is it like something that you are not willing to give up? I'm sure like some people would be like, oh, it's not a big deal. For some people, it is. For some people, profession is like, sure, like we really don't care where are we really working. So that might be a good decision maker. For some people, money is a real concern, and for in the context that they cannot invest initially, or if they're going to make that decision, even if you're going to like earn all of it back while you're in the US like in a couple months, but making that decision very well informed is very important. Fortunately, like my struggles were a little different. My struggles were a little with where I wanted to be is where I wanted to be. I just did not want to match. So it's very easy to look at people. Oh, someone matched. Like I never had a concern that I would match, but my struggle was where I wanted to match, right? So you have to understand, when you're looking at 10 different people, they all have their own struggles. You have to find the people who you resonate with, because they have similar struggles. Like a person who is a US citizen will never have that struggle of trying to prove themselves better than an American citizen. Not that they don't have their own struggles, but I think you have to start identifying what your questions are, and then asking them to the right people. And again, listening to everyone does not mean that it has to apply to you. Does not mean where I did my electives or did my rotations will work for you. I was doing at a time when COVID was at its peak. No one was getting any electives. I did one tele, I did three physical, however, wherever I could get. I loved it. I enjoyed it. But more than anything else, the same people doing their rotations there, 10 people would have 10 different opinions. You have to be someone who takes the positive out of wherever they are. If you are at a relation where you're working more than you would like, think about it like you're getting to learn more. If you are at a place where you're working less than what you thought, then use that time to prepare for your steps. So it's all about your perspective. And then I literally was myself at all my rotations, because we all don't have a lot of time. We're struggling with our applications and stuff. And everywhere I went, I got this remark that we have loved working with you. We are so impressed you have all of this knowledge. And I think I'm not doing something exceptional. The only two things I'm doing is going to work happy, being myself. That personality is infectious. If you're happy, it will showcase. And that only comes when you're doing something you love. You cannot force that on something you don't love. And the other thing is, if you really like what you like, I wasn't studying neurology when I was going to electives. I just loved it so much that I knew a lot of answers. And when I didn't, I asked the right questions because I was actually inquisitive. And that is all anyone needs. No one is expecting me to be a professor in neurology already. They're going to make me that, right? And life is all going to be about learning. But what no one can instill in you is that love for something. So that is one of my goals in life, like at least expose people to neurology, to let them know that this is an option if you like. Because I think that is also a thing. A lot of people are like, we never got exposed enough to neurology, we don't know if we like it. So they have this neurophobia. And that takes away an option from them, because it's a very different personality of students and people who will like neurology, and they will like it to the point where you're like, sure, I never had a doubt that I'll be a good doctor. If I was a surgeon, I'll be good at it. If I was a doctor, I'll be good at it. But if I'm a neurologist, I'll be great at it because I really want to be that. And I think everyone deserves that choice and option to become that person. um, so yeah, and I think you can apply that to a lot of different specialities. Coming to the US, matching into medicine is one thing. Coming to the US, matching into anything beyond medicine is another thing. So that is how at least I strategize, and that just boils down to the number of seats that are available.
So, was it always your passion and love towards neurology, or you also wanted to try your hands on the neurosurgery aspect of it?
Sure, and I think that's a great question. I'll just take one step back from there to answer if neurology was always on my radar, anyways, right? Because I honestly went to med school because I ended up scoring really well, and I'm like, okay, what is the other option? Sure, I just love science so much, but I never knew what I wanted to be as much, if at all. Ortho, because my dad was orthopedic surgeon, already was kind of assisting him in surgeries, and it was great. Like I never identified myself as a surgeon. If at all, it would be an orthopedic branch, because that just fascinated me, until I realized, like in my third or fourth year, like neurology is a thing, like it's a separate thing. Uh, I'm good at medicine, I like it, but it's too much for me, and too much in a way where the world is running towards specialization, where you're anyways going to specialize. Then my thing would want, like I would want my thing to be something that is complex enough for me to break it to the world, and it is serving me as an educational discipline as well as a doctor clinical discipline, and some part of it as research. And I think neurology fit the perfect balance for me. I remember like teaching like my colleagues about the circle of Willis, like just from simple basic things like, oh, let me tell you how this is not a two-dimensional thing. This is how the vessels come across, and let me break it down to how you don't have to like cram it, because that is one thing that takes people away from neurology. Is like, oh, there's so many exceptions and there's so much of cramming. And I'll give you an example about it later about how I try like normalize it for people, like we're just talking fancy stuff in a way that comes across fancy, and the language is same, but it's so easy at its heart. Like the brain is all about gray matter and white matter. I can call the lentiform nucleus globus pallidus and putamen and make it sound very fancy to you. But the reason I'm calling it lentiform nucleus is because it looks like a lens, and that's it. So neurology is very beautiful at its heart, and that's what I try. But I am telling you this because people should know that this person who comes across as that he wanted neurology all his life, it wasn't the case. I was in a very real dilemma between orthopedics in India versus neurology in the US because I'm putting myself in a place where my dad already has his contacts. I'm very comfortable with orthopedics. I scored a good rank in NEET, and like orthopedics is a very real possibility in my own college. Life is gonna be easier. Versus, why do I want to like get myself out of that comfort zone, go to the US, apply for a specialty which is not as easy to get. Also, knowing myself, I don't want to go to just any place. And it's like, we'll see, we'll go from there and trust how things happen. And fingers crossed, they happened. The second part of your question, neurosurgery versus neurology, I think there's a lot of overlap for sure, because we collaborate on a lot of cases. When you come to the US, you'll realize what cases are yours, what cases are neurosurgeries, but really they're both of yours. And how you collaborate, like all the strokes are ours. I'm the person who's going to come on stroke alerts, and if there's a bleed, I'll find it and ask neurosurgery. I need your opinion over it to if you want to operate over it or not. Versus, there's a neurosurgical aspect to both neurology and neurosurgery, which culminates in neuroendovascular or neurointerventional fellowships, where you're basically doing mechanical thrombectomies. And that, as of this era, is kind of the peak of where both these specializations can be. Like, you're literally going and taking out a clot. So we have a lot of neurology colleagues who want to do that neurointervention. And it's not just your passion for neurology, it's also a lifestyle choice. Like how your life is going to look. You're going to be on call. You're probably also going to be on call doing those procedures. If that's your thing, it's great because you're thinking like a neurologist and also getting the opportunity to be a surgeon. For me, the clarity has always been so clear that I know if I do it, I'll be good at it, actually might be great at it. But that's not my calling. That lifestyle does not fascinate me enough. But importantly, I am going to be more successful at a place where I am doing more med ed stuff. I am making more people fall in neurology by my practice. And also for myself, I'm more actually fascinated by diagnosing conditions, finding the stroke alerts, which ones need intervention, and sending them to the rare end of things to a interventional fellow. So for me, I think as a neurosurgeon, I've seen people who love it, who want to do it. And it's never the fascination of something is too difficult that I want to do it. I want to show the world that I can do it. That's never the case. I really don't like fancy it. I just don't. I just don't understand the concept of standing 14 hours in a surgery. That's not my thing. Not that they're not important, but that's not my thing. So the same reason I did not choose neurology because it was difficult to get or it was easy to get. It was just my thing. It was just my cup of tea. And that is a love you nurture. Like it's important to recognize it, force yourself to ask questions. I think I like it, and then nurture that love to the point that now today, if you ask me, what would you be if not a neurologist? I would not be able to think about anything else.
So basically, that's the love and passion. You just followed your heart, and then that's where you landed up here.
Yeah, I think as much as we complicate it in ways like, sure, and I do try that as well. Oh, present yourself like this, write this in your personal statement, present it like this. You should have some research in your CV. All of that is important, but I think at the heart of it, it's so clear to see someone who loves neurology or like loves whatever they're doing, and that comes across. Everything else will fall apart if you don't love what you're applying for. So
So,
it's important to do everything, but to also know what you really love and do things in that direction.
so now, while ago, you just mentioned, like, you give several exams and you taught most of the places across all India, etc. Also, when it comes to the USMLEs, you took the step one way before it became pass or fail. So your step one scores. I mean, although I have all the step one, step two, step three scores with me, do you want me to reveal those to the audience?
Sure. I mean,
If you're
hopefully
okay.
motivates a few people. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Right? So correct me if I'm wrong. So your step one way back in June 2021 was 259,
Sounds right.
which was a splendid score. followed by definitely your step 2 CA, which was 261 in March of 22. Within just about 9 months' time, you managed to crack the next exam as well. And just while you were applying, you also took your step 3 with a wonderful 247 kind of a score.
Hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
in reality, do you think this is an exceptional score where only a handful of them can get, or it is a practical score? If you give your best, people can make it. Because most of the times, when I speak to students, I've seen people have that mind block. Oh, that kind of score, I'm not made for that. So I just want to clear the clouds in the student's mind that okay, fine, it's not always the numbers, or oh, you want to get into surgery or neurology, then you need to have this kind of
Hmm.
score, which is impossible to get. So what would you want to advise the student to get into a neurological kind of
Hmm.
a specialty? How should their USMLE approach be, and what are the kind of scores that they should be targeting
Hmm.
if they want to get into it?
I agree. Again, I'll think of your question as having two parts to it. What do the scores really mean is one, and then practically how much score do you like expect for it to be a decent application. I think one, the truth is, because I like analyzing how things have been over the years. I think every year or over the years, at least, the level of the exam changes. What scores mean change. I remember 240, 250 being crazy like 10 years ago, like a crazy score, to the point where you see decent number of people now getting that score. Part of it is because things have become competitive. People are spending more time making sure they're doing better. But I think part of it is also the scoring system itself, because it's very percentile based, so you really don't know. But the important thing is, do your best every year, because you are going to be compared with the same cohort, right? The scores are based on the percentile. So if people, you are getting 250 and you were a 240 person, then probably other people who were a 240 are also getting 250. So it becomes the same. The naked truths behind that is, now given only step 2 is objective, it's important. It's an important filter, and I think this is an answer that every person with common sense can understand. If 500 applications are going to be reviewed at a program which is getting 5,000 applications, they need one objective criteria, and that apparently ends up being step 2. I think, sure, there are levels to people's ability to score well, and that is different from their intelligence. Intelligence and test taking strategies are two very different things. And I think intelligent people need to be trained to be smart enough to adopt the right test taking strategies. And I think that's something that I intrinsically had. I had that insight. Like, I did not let the intelligence get to me and not have myself act smart. In the exam, if I know these three questions are going to mess with my head, I'm not going to like challenge my intelligence right there and then. I'm going to be smart enough to take a step back, know that I have to complete the whole exam. I'm missing out on this one question. That's fine. I'm not questioning my intelligence at that point. I know I'm intelligent enough for it. And sometimes the question's messed up. Like, sometimes I know that this question has three answers. I'm choosing the one best answer. Or sometimes in challenging myself, am I overthinking too much? Because that is again a question a lot of people have. Like, the exam was actually easier and I made the wrong mistake because I was trying to think what the examiner is trying to ask me. It couldn't be this easy. So I think your knowledge is not questionable, but you have to be smart to understand what is being asked. So I think at least that part is something that can be taught to some level. It's important for people to realize to not blindly just keep studying. How you're applying is equally important. And that way, at least you can make sure if you're getting a 230, you probably were a 240 person or 245 person. And I'm not saying that everyone's a 270 person. And I'm also not saying that if I were to study like 5 months more, I would have not gotten a 270. I did just one pass because could not do more. I am just not that person. I just remember all the questions once I do them. So I wanted to make sure that I'm doing it the right way. Uh, Again, am I smart if I'm spending 5 more months to get a 270 from a 261? Sure, if someone's applying for a specialty where they are expected to get a 270, great. I think I am dumber if I'm spending those 5 more months burning myself out to get like 5 more marks when I'm already at a point where I've gotten the score that I need to. Again, this is coming in retrospect because I did not know what my score would have been at that point. But I have to take the leap of faith and tell myself this is good enough. And I have to try balance my mental state, what scores that I'm going to get, what is it going to mean. And once I have a score, go from there. You're not going back. You're not going back. Go from there. But yes, push yourself to get the best of what you can, whatever that means. If you are a 200, an American graduate, you literally need a decent score to make things happen. Make sure you get a 220. Because if you are a 220 person getting a 230, or you are a 230 person getting a 240, or you are a 250 person getting a 260, all of that means that you are opening more doors for yourself. Even though everyone's going to go into one door, but it's just probabilistically better, less stress for you, and more options for you at the same time. Take it step by step, get the best scores possible. Just don't focus on being more knowledgeable. Be smart enough to apply your knowledge to your exam, and it does not stop there. The point is that is a thought process, a way of thinking. We did a lot of microbiology infectious diseases in India because we have a lot of infectious diseases. Like no one can pass without knowing everything about tuberculosis, like the RNTCP, the SPM subject, the anything about leprosy. Like even though we don't have leopards anymore as much, right? And it's very easy to tell yourself like, oh, I'm just doing it for the exams. It really doesn't matter. We don't see them anymore. This knowledge is waste. Especially I'm going to the US. No one's going to ask me this. Rather than that, whatever you ended up studying, study it in a way that you can apply it or find a reason to apply it. I was in the US. We had a patient during my first year, had concerns for malaria because he had traveled from a tropical country. And then we were consulting ID because that is how it works here in the US. You consult ID, which is great. But that does not mean that you, as a medicine person, are supposed to throw all the knowledge in the dustbin. I knew like, okay, let's check. What do the gametocytes show? If it's like multiple types, it could be a vivax versus ovale versus falciparum. And if it's like ovale or vivax, you would be concerned for hypnozoites, which would require you to give primaquine because that is the only thing that will kill the hypnozoite stage in the liver. Otherwise, the relapse is going to happen. And all of this knowledge is not because I opened a book and read all of this before talking to you or before talking to them. It was me finding a way that I read this when I needed to in my second year in India, and I use that knowledge right now talking to them. And they're like, oh, where did you do your med school from? And I don't give or take away credit from any med school because all of this studying is happening on our own in any med school that we are in because that's an expectation. And I get it. I did not know how physical therapy, occupational therapy, social work worked in the US because in India, that wasn't a part of our responsibilities as much. And I'm learning what I did not know, but I'm not giving up on things that I knew. So you have to find that balance, make sure any knowledge you have, you can put that to use, including physics that we used to study in our 11th or 12th. You will find people all around the world who will be like, why do we even do physics for med school? It doesn't make sense. It's useless. I have found the greatest uses for it in like cardiology or like transcranial Dopplers that we do to understand what's going on. Then am I expecting stenosis to cause something? And I can be that person who finds that logic. If you don't have that knowledge, you will give it up from a point where I can calculate the weights very easily to give how much contrast just because my maths is strong from back in the day. Whereas people here, like, it's a cultural thing. You are more dependent on calculator since always. And you can be that person who will be like, oh, I can just calculate over the calculator, but find a use for the skill that you have, right? And I think that is important overall in life, including when you're preparing for your steps.
Right. Now, I've known you since your college days. So, how was your journey from being a chirpy, enthusiastic, lively student to a second year of, a resident now? So, most of the times, I mean, I would like to know more about, first of all, your a journey in short, in case if you have anything else to add, and secondly, the difference between the first year intern versus a second year resident now. So, what are the differences and challenges that you face on a day-to-day basis?
So I'll just like summarize a little about how my journey has been and then focus on my last 2 years in the US. Um, so since always, I think pretty much always scored well, but was very open to the point of not becoming a doctor. Like my dad, orthopedic surgeon, he's like, you write poetry, you like an artist. Are you sure you really want to become a doctor? But for me, it was like, I don't even know if I want to become a doctor, but I love science. I want to like do PCB. And I regret not doing maths, but that is how it works. Like if you become a doctor, really, you don't have time for maths. But I still like watch videos on physics, maths on YouTube. But I took that. I ended up topping not because I was the most hardworking person. There are more hardworking people. There are more intelligent people out there. I was just doing what I loved throughout. I ended up scoring really well. Plus one, plus two, 11th, 12th, or pre med, however you call it, was that time where I had the same routine, waking up in the morning, going to my tuition classes, or then going to school, chilling, relaxing, going to all the birthday parties when I could, coming back home, studying because I was enjoying it, giving my exams, always looking at the bigger picture. Never really, really stressed. Not that I didn't used to prepare. I used to love giving the exams, so I used to prepare in excitement, but not in stress. I used to be that person, even if it's a test for waves or thermodynamics tomorrow, I'm studying like evolution because I love it right now. So always looked at the bigger picture. I think things happened well, probabilistically, ended up matching at a lot of good places, like I mentioned. At the end, knew myself, did great. I felt this is where I want to be for multiple reasons in Amritsar. I think one of the best decisions I took, stayed with my family for 5 years, because at that time I was exploring myself, like what are other things that I like. I ended up like being in a lot of quizzes, from participating to finding my love for quizzing, to organizational stuff, to helping people out, to sharing my knowledge, found my love for med ed, found my love for neurology. And those 5 years I loved, enjoyed my med school life, because I think that doesn't come back. You cannot be a person who's like, oh, I'm starting to become a doctor, I'm going to have fun after 20 years. You never know how things are going to happen. Your fun, your education, your life has to happen simultaneously, whatever you're doing. 5 years decently well. I started my USMLE journey honestly around my fourth year formally. But once my internship started is when I started giving all my exams, my steps. And not to say that that is the right or wrong thing to do, but study throughout, and whatever you feel comfortable as a person. Like I did not want to give my steps before I had the whole knowledge of my med school, because I think that really helps me. And I also didn't want to like not use my third year to enjoy, celebrate life and study, but focusing on another something just because I'm running behind things. During my intern year, mostly passed my steps decently. You said I took nine, like that 9 months is quick enough. I think like I also enjoyed during that time. So that was actually more than I needed. Um, so I had my sister's wedding at that time. So lived every moment as it came, as much as I could, traveled, but also remembering what's the bigger picture, right? Went to the US, did my electives during the COVID year. Again, one of the best times that I had, like going traveling with a purpose, being smart enough because money is real, trying to be at places where I have family or friends, so that I'm saving money there. Where I have to spend, but being smart enough, like not like you can spend $1 million and you can spend a quarter of that for the same amount of experience. Like it's about where you are spending money, and it's about where and how you are like traveling, being smart, knowing, having the awareness of your face, because our parents are the ones who are probably sponsoring us most of the time. They're going to be either in a difficult spot, or going to be people who are going to like, we have all the money that you need, you spend wherever, but you have to decide how and where are you spending those things. Came to the US, did my electives, went back, applied for the match. 6 months, low key stressed, but honestly enjoyed a lot. Traveled, went to Mexico for a month for a research, because I knew this time's not gonna come back. And then residency started. Hope, fingers crossed, things happened really well. Matched at my top choice, Emory. Um, since then, tried keeping my YouTube channel alive, things that I was learning, sharing it on my YouTube channel, which is called Medically Mediocre, for a reason. Because a lot of people used to come to me like, oh, you were a special case, you are intelligent, obviously you did all of this doesn't probably apply to us. I'm like, that's what I want to change. If I'm telling you I'm born smart, then I have a lot of vices. Like I am, I've seen more hardworking people, but then I want to share this back. Like, if let's assume we are all mediocre, because we kind of are, because if we were not smart, we would not make it to medicine. We've always been the top 10% people in our own classes in school. We're all smart people who made it to medicine. But the world operates where you start comparing yourself among smart people and you feel you're dumb. And that takes a lot of toll on your confidence. And no one talks about it because everyone wants to come across as like, oh, we're the better people, right? but everyone's smart enough to make, if they're making it to medicine, and no one's a genius because they chose to be in medicine. Otherwise, they would not have. So everyone's mediocre at the end of the day. So I think that was the logic when I started that channel, Medically Mediocre, and that's where I share all the USMLE content or whatever I'm honestly going through. That channel is not specifically about endorsing something or someone. It's about, these are the things that I learned and I shared. This is where I am at my stage in life. If it was USMLE, I had those videos. If it was a visa struggle I had, it was those videos. Right now, I did my intern year. What I'm working on is like 10 things you should know before coming to the US, how intern year works. Because I think, like we were talking, a lot of people know how to enter the US or match into the US because then things are easy. You'll survive. But I don't want you to survive. I want you to thrive. You are smart enough to know these things. The only reason you're going to struggle in your intern is because no one told you. No one told you that this is how the system works. If I could learn it in 3 months, and even I struggled in my first month, and people like, oh, this is how it works. I'm like, no one told me. Like, you have to tell it to me once for me to know how things work. And I want like my fellow incoming newbies to have that information so that then they can focus on real knowledge. Like, they don't have to worry about how to accommodate, adjust into the system. Electives do a great job to a point, but how hospitals work is very different. So I think that's important. So knowing very basic management things, which will be with you throughout life, including how do you think about Lasix? How much do you want to give it to someone? What is the difference between basal insulin, bolus insulin, and sliding scale insulin? Why does any person with diabetes coming to the hospital need to be on insulin? Because you can titrate it. Basic management of things, having this confidence of talking to families, to patients, informing the staff, coming in with a good personality, how all of those things culturally can impact your performance so much. And I think most IMGs, especially, are smart enough to understand these things once they're told. Again, I learned all of these things starting from a point where I was like kind of not knowing how to go about things, to the point where in my last 2 months I was told like, do you want to like switch over to medicine because you're doing so great, we can see your passion, you're teaching a lot of students and you're also doing great at your job. And I was, oh, and the only person who knows my journey from day one of starting intern year to my last day is me, right? Because the last person I met told me, oh, you were great. Like, he probably assumes that I've been great throughout the year. And the first person I met probably thinks I'm still not great at my job, right? So the only person who knows that is you yourself. And the way residency works is it's training. As soon as you know or feel or know that you're good at something, you enter the next stage where you're again a newbie. So now I'm transitioned to neurology. There is no time, no need, no expectation of you to be going back and show the world that, see, you've learned this and you're good at it. No, that is something you keep with you and you build on that. Now you are a senior resident or you are a consultant. At least your expectations are very different. You're a specialist service. People are going to page me. I'm going to be expected to know the answers when it comes to neurology. I'm going to be expected to do a basic neuro exam on every stroke scale right away. And it is pointless to compare that, oh, a psych resident or derm resident is not doing the same amount of work. They are not supposed to, they're not expected to, because that's a choice they made. And that probably counted into why they wanted derm. So those comparisons are unnecessary. You have to expect, understand, life is now going to be unfair. And that is an unfairness that you chose. And that came at the price of you being happy. You're happy because you're doing that. Life as a dermatologist for me would have been very much easy, but I would not have been happy because that's not me. Some people know that they really want a better life. They really take their profession as their profession, and they really don't care if their work-life balance is good. More than happy for them to choose whatever they want to choose. But you have to be very open, transparent to yourself. Same thing, life for a surgical resident is probably worse than my life, right? So I don't want to take that worse life just to show to the world, see, I'm a cooler person. Honestly, I'm cool enough if I'm doing what I wanted to do. But yeah, practically, even now, every single day I'm managing stroke alerts. Every single day I'm learning, oh, I did not know this yesterday, I know it now. And personally, to me, I think it's great if you have a great team. I get attracted by kinder people who are willing to teach, because I am a person, as much as I know, I will always come across as a person who's willing to learn. And I think that in the general scheme of things is appreciated. it will come across if you're knowledgeable. It's a fine balance. You will know how to navigate that of between confidence and non arrogance, but always be someone who's willing to learn. And one thing that I'd like to always encourage is like give back, like whatever you've learned, give it back right away, because you probably will be relevant to a lot of people right now. 5 years from now, like if I think like I don't make these videos, or like I'll help people 10 years from now, it's not going to be as relevant. Like people are going to be more fresher. And I think that is something that I've taught myself. If I was privileged enough to get 20 interviews in neurology, it's not that, oh, I wanted to go to one place. It doesn't even matter. How I take it is like 20 interviews means 4 panelists on every interview. I met 80 to 100 people. And I understood the psychology of every single person in very different categories. How the people talk, what is expected of me, how do I react, when was I stressed, when was I not stressed. So I want to give that across. So I made like 3 mock interviews on my channel, so that I know in India or IMGs, they're not exposed to interviews that way as much as much. So just seeing that, a lot of people texted me, mailed me, messaged me like, "Oh, this sounds so much fun, and this is so relaxing." Just to have an insight into how it looks. So I think that is very important, and just not running behind the score blindly, because you're a package. Because I've also seen a lot of people, oh, this person got a 270, but he did not match. What a bad luck. It's not like that. If you are a 270 and you do not know even how to talk or how to come across as a person who's communicative, what good is 270 to you or to me? To no one. Especially in this country, not at all. So knowing you have a good score, but you're a personality that people would want to like, or at least you're a person who would want to learn to be better and be in the system, I think that's the most important thing. And
Great.
as in when every year comes, you'll be learning something new anyways. Yeah.
Great. So let me just, add some more subscribers to you, especially all the ones who are watching this for the first time. Uh, Dr. Avi Singh has his own YouTube channel by the name of Medically Mediocre. Please subscribe to his channel. I'm pretty sure that's definitely going to be helpful to you, right? Hopefully that's a small endorsement from my side. Right.
Right.
Just coming to the last few couple of important questions that I feel that our audience should know is, can you tell me your take on the research as well as the clinical rotation side of it? How many research does it usually take to be in a good spot to get a residency in neurology, and of course the rotations?
That's a good question. I think a lot of people do have that question, like how do we think about research? And I think, long story short, research is a part of medicine on the western side of this earth. Not saying that you are not a research person comes across as you don't understand research, or comes across you're not even willing to understand research. So there is minimal place for you on this side. Having said that, research does not mean that you have to be the person who's doing researches in the lab, or you are the person doing like being the principal worker on most trials. You're not expected to be that. You need to just show that you worked on a couple case reports, if at all, or been part of any research activity. And I think that escalates your application from a 0 or 10, 15 to 85. From there on, whatever research you're doing, like you've done 20, 30, 50 publications, you're only going from 85 to 95 to me. So just understanding how much value just having some research on your application counts, which can be anything, a case report, a couple publications, any little thing. Like even if I was like the research endorsement ambassador for India for AMSA International, that counts as my research experience, because I was helping people understand what research is in some way. And what I'm trying to get at is that the interviewer should know that not that he's expected to open a lab, but he understands research. He can read research, because on this side of things, new medicines come right away and people start using those based on research articles. So that's how medicine works here, because it's a little different from back in India, where it's mass medicine. Like you have to ultimately treat 90 out of 100 people somehow, somewhere, and you don't have a lot of time to indulge into a lot of active reading. I think it's expected, and I think it's nice to understand research in that way. Having said that, not every place is research heavy. There's a lot of community driven hospitals who need residents. They cannot just survive based on people who want to be researchers. So those are your kind of things. But just let them know, like, I've checked the box. I have a couple case reports. That's it. I'm not in love with research, and that's fine. Like for me, being a doctor clinically is number one. Being an educator is number two, and being involved in research is number three. Um, and I think depending on which place you want to go, your CV should reflect that. If you're going to Mayo, you're going to need a lot of research. I never really wanted to go there because I was never a primary research person. Yeah, I think you're muted, Abhishek.
Yeah, sorry about that. Uh,
Yeah,
any specific requirement for your clinical rotations?
I think again, good point. A lot of people ask me like, we are going to these named places which are kind of paid sometimes. Sometimes they're free. Sometimes people have contacts. Sometimes people are going to these random places. I think what really matters is your overall picture. I would expect or hope a good application looks like this person has had a hospital experience at least once, has had a clinical experience in an outpatient setting at least once. Most of these experiences are at least in the specialty of his choice or where he's applying, or at least which is relevant to the specialty, like medicine for neurology, right? There is no expectation of you to pay or go to places which are only like Mayo or only places like very named hospitals. I think a balance of it includes getting letters of recommendations from places or people who've really worked with you and they can really write good stuff for you. So ideally, if you ask me, how it looks to me is at least one hospital rotation, at least one really, really good personalized letter, at least one outpatient clinical rotation. And all of these things can be like mix and match. Like could be two hospital, two in neurology, one in medicine, one is psych. Like the psych one, psych letter could be really good from a person who really knows you. Someone could be a research coordinator, research LOR. So all of these things have to be a mix and match, and I think that's okay. You don't have to be like it needs to check everything. I will delay my rotations based on I'm not getting it from here or there. It's a lot of luck, a lot of contact sometimes, and sometimes they work or they don't. But just check their rotation criteria. Some places require you to give a TOEFL, some places require your step scores. And importantly, apply or start searching for them in advance, like because sometimes the delay is like a year. So you don't want to be in a place where you're applying for a rotation like tomorrow and you wanted to go to a great place and you can't. But nothing is the end of the world. Make the most of wherever you end up going.
Okay, great. And now that you've used so many, sources and resources while you were studying for your USMLEs, would you want to suggest or endorse Kaplan to the students who are looking forward for getting into it?
uh, I remember like when I was in my third year, I was like kind of starting. I think the Kaplan was the only thing that was like that had a name at that time, and I remember using like when Kaplan's textbooks got introduced to me, like there was a very different take from what our textbooks look like. And I think that's what like kind of helped me understand how crisp, important, pertinent information needs to be understood, not like just keep on cramming the whole thing. So I think I've had a great run with Kaplan at that time. I've been privileged to know you guys. I've listened to you when I was applying myself. Always very
Pleasure.
inspiring. Um, so I think honestly, whatever works best for you is great. Give Kaplan a shot for sure. Understand if this is the way that you function best. In addition, I think UWorld is something that everyone does and kind of needs to do. That's a great resource just to like teach yourself. But again, use it as your testing tool, not just as your learning tool. But also, if you are someone who's using it only as a testing tool, don't be afraid to use it as a learning tool. That's important because a lot of people I see are very afraid. They never feel they're confident enough to start taking UWorld and they delay it a lot. So it's some wrongs being there, and don't run behind too many resources is my other take. Like see what works for you, give everything a decent shot, open it, and it's okay if something works for you and doesn't work for the person in the next room. It's okay. You do you.
Great. And lastly, before we wind up, any final words of wisdom, any Anything that any message that you would want to give to our audience?
I think one very important thing to know is we sometimes feel very overcompetitive about people around us, and it's okay. It's a very genuine, natural human emotion. But when it comes to USMLE, I think there's enough place for everyone who deserves to be here. And what I mean by deserving is if this is where you want to be and you're willing to work enough for what is expected of you, there's enough place. So don't fight the urge of helping others along your way. After you're here, it's always busy. It's as busy as I'm gonna be in life, and if I can make time to give back, you definitely can help a lot more people. Stay in touch, stay kind, because that kindness is gonna help you survive residency, because wherever residency is, it's tough. It's a tough phase in life. It's hectic, it's grinding. um, be kind to yourself. Again, try give back in your own little way when you can. um, and Yeah, I mean, you've chosen a great profession. Always know that this is one of those professions which, just by being at work, you are doing charity. You're serving humankind. Like, how many people can really say that, right? So just keep telling yourself why you really chose what you really chose. And a lot of times people will ask you like, oh, you're so smart, you're so intelligent, why are you going to a different country? Like, why you're not serving your own country? And how I think about it is like, I'm just doing justice to my own profession. I'm trying to be the best at what I need to be. And if I do that, I don't only help this country or that country or my country or your country. I'm helping every human on this earth, pretty much. And that's the plan, or at least that's how I go about it. So yeah, that would be my final message. And for everything else, like Abhishek said, I'm more than happy to help you guys over my YouTube, Medically Mediocre by Avi, or Instagram by the same name. um, but yeah, thank you, Abhishek.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That was really a nice and humble message that you gave to all the students. What is important is humanity, and let's not just be bound by the borders, but just explore. Yeah. So with having said that, through time crunch, we will have to leave it here at this point in time. But if there's public demand, we'll definitely look forward for episode 2 and try to explore and dig down more about Dr. Avi Singh, right? So thank you so much, Dr. Avi Singh. We really appreciate your time.
Lovely, Abhishek. It has been a pleasure. Always to see you. All the very best to everyone who's seeing this.
Thank you so much. Subscribe to this channel, tell your friends about it, share this channel with them, and yeah, don't forget to press the bell icon so that you get to know you're the first ones to be notified of the upcoming episode